ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಮೊದಲು ಮತ್ತು ನಂತರ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಒಂದು ಸನ್ನಿವೇಶವನ್ನು ಮಾತ್ರ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಪರ್ಯಾಯ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಏಕೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂತ ಇದ್ರ ಹಿಂದೆ ಕೆಲವು ಅಸಂಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾವೆ. ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಹಿನಿ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಏನಿದೆ ಅದು ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಕೆಟ್ಟಿದೆ, ಅದರ ವಿಶ್ವಾಸಾರ್ಹತೆ ಕಳೆದುಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಜನರ ಮತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ಮೂಲ ಆಶಯಗಳೇನಿದ್ದಾವೆ, ಪ್ರಜಾಪ್ರಭುತ್ವ, ಜಾತ್ಯತೀತತೆ ಮತ್ತು ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ನ್ಯಾಯ, ಇದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಆಘಾತ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುವಾಗ ಈ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗೆ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಬಿಡಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಅದನ್ನ ಎದುರಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇನ್ನೇ ಸನ್ನಿವೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಬಿಕ್ಕಟ್ಟಿನ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿಯೇ ಇದೆ. ಮಾಧ್ಯಮನು ಇಡೀ ಬಿಕ್ಕಟ್ಟಿನ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿದೆ, ಪರಿಹಾರದ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಎಂಬುದು ಒಂದು ರೀತಿ ಸರ್ವೇ ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾದ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ. ಸೊ ಈ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಜನ ಅದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಹಿನಿ ಹೌದಾ, ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಹೌದಾ ಅಂತಲೂ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ನಿಜ ಸಹ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ನಾವು ವಾಸ್ತವವನ್ನು ಗಮನಿಸಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಒಟ್ಟು ಜನಮಾನಸವನ್ನು ಅದು ಭದ್ರವಾಗಿ ಹಿಡಿದಿದೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಜನಮಾನಸ ಅದರ ಸುದ್ದಿ ವಿಶ್ಲೇಷಣೆ, ರಂಜನೆ, ಬೋಧನೆ ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಸಹ ಅದನ್ನೊಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯ ಮೂಲ ಅಂತ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ ಅರ್ಥದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ನಿರ್ಲಕ್ಷ್ಯ ಮಾಡುವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಇರುವ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಆಶಯ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ಇಂತಹ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಹಿನಿ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಇರುವಾಗ ಅದನ್ನು ರಿಪೇರಿ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇದೆಯಾ, ಅದನ್ನು ಕೆಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗಿದೆ, ಅದನ್ನೇನಾದ್ರು ಸರಿ ಮಾಡ್ಪಡಿಸಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಚರ್ಚೆ ಸಂವಾದ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ಬಹುಶಃ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ರೀತಿಯಾದ ಸರಿ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪರ್ಯಾಯವಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ನಿಜವಾದ ಜನಪರ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಕಟ್ಟಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಪರ್ಯಾಯ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಹೇಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು, ಹೇಗೆ ಕಟ್ಟಬೇಕು, ಅದರ ಸವಾಲುಗಳೇನು, ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆಗಳೇನು, ಇದು ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದಿರುವ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಸಂವಾದ. ಈ ಸಂವಾದ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಬರೀ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆ ನಾವು ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ ಆಗಿ ಒಂದು ಪರ್ಯಾಯ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಕಟ್ಟುವ ಕೆಲಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆಲ್ಲರ ಜೊತೆ ಕೈ ಜೋಡಿಸುವ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಸನ್ನಿವೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೆ ಇದು ಒಂದು ದಿಕ್ಸೂಚಿ ಸಹ, ನಮಗೊಂದು ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿ ಸಹ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯ ಪಾಠ ಕಲಿಯಬೇಕಂತಿದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿಯ ಏನು ಪರಿಣತರು, ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಪರಿಣತರು ಮತ್ತು ಇತರ ಪರಿಣತರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ಸಂವಾದದಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ಒಂದು ದೇಶಶಕ್ತಿ ಮೀಡಿಯಾಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ದಿಕ್ಕು ದೆಸೆ ಸಿಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಪಾತ್ರದಿಂದ ಕಾಯ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಒಂದು ಎರಡು ಮಾತು ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ, ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಬಹುಶಃ ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ದೀರ್ಘ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಇರುವ ಒಂದು ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು, ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಸಮೂಹ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. 1940ರ ದಶಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರು ನಿರಂಜನ್ ಅವರು ಪ್ರಧಾನ ಸಂಪಾದಕರಾಗಿದ್ದ ಜನಶಕ್ತಿ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಯಿಂದ ಆರಂಭವಾದ ಈ ಇಡೀ ಸಮೂಹ ಇವತ್ತಿನವರೆಗೂ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ರೂಪದಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. 2000ರಿಂದ ತಿರ್ಗಾ ಒಂದು ವಾರಪತ್ರಿಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಪ್ರಕಟ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ 2014ರಿಂದ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬು, ವೆಬ್, ಫೇಸ್ಬುಕ್ ಇತ್ಯಾದಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಪ್ರಕಟ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಇದರ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಇನ್ನೂ ಅದನ್ನ ವ್ಯಾಪಕಗೊಳಿಸಬೇಕು, ಆಳಗೊಳಿಸಬೇಕು ಮತ್ತು ಜನಮಾನಸವನ್ನು ಹಿಡಿಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಮ್ಮ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಇರುವ ಈ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ ಸಂಘಟಿಸಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿಕ್ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಈ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಅತಿಥಿಗಳಾದ ಪಿ ಸಾಯಿನಾಥ್ ಮತ್ತು ಉಮಾಪತಿ ಅವರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಕಿರು ಪರಿಚಯದೊಂದಿಗೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಸಾಯಿನಾಥ್ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಉಮಾಪತಿ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಬಹುಶಃ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆ ಮಾತಾಗಿರೋರು, ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಪರಿಚಯ ಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಒಂದು ಔಪಚಾರಿಕವಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತು ಒಂದು ಪೂರ್ಣತೆಗಾಗಿ ಅವರ ಕೆಲವು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಾಯಿನಾಥ್ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಪತ್ರಕಾರಿತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣ ವಿದ್ಯಮಾನಗಳ ವರದಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಸಿದ್ಧರಾದರು. ಈ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮೊದಲಿಂದನೂ ನಾವೇನು ಪರ್ಯಾಯ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅದರ ಅಧಿಕಾರರಾಗಿದ್ದರು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದವರು, ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಮಾದರಿ ಆಗಿದ್ದವರು ಮತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರ ಇಡೀ ಪತ್ರಕಾರಿತೆ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಪರ್ಯಾಯ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾತ್ರ ವಹಿಸಿದೆ. ಅವ್ರು ಮೊದಲು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ ಬ್ರಿಡ್ಜ್ ಇರಬಹುದು ಅಥವಾ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇತ್ತೀಚಿನ ಅವರ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕೆಲಸ ಆದ PARI ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಉದ್ದಕ್ಕೂ ಅವರು ಈ ಪರ್ಯಾಯ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮವನ್ನು ಬಂದರು. ಅದು ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅವರ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ವಿಶೇಷತೆ, ಅವರು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಹಿನಿ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಅಂತ ನಾವೇನು ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿಯೂ 80% ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ 80% ಜನ ರೈತರು, ಕಾರ್ಮಿಕರು, ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯ ಜನ, ಮಧ್ಯಮ ವರ್ಗದವರು, ಅವರಿಗೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ದನಿ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅವರ ದನಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಅವರು ಹೋರಾಡ್ತಾ ಬಂದವರು ಮತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನು ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೆದ ನವ ಉದಾರವಾದಿ ನೀತಿಗಳ ಪರಿಣಾಮದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಹಿಂದೂ ಭಾಗವಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದ ಅವರು ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣ ರೈತ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಮತ್ತೆ ಈಗ ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವುದಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾತ್ರ ವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದು ಎರಡನ್ನೂ ಬಹುಶಃ ನಮ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪತ್ರಕರ್ತರಿಗೆ ನಿಜವಾದ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾದರಿ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಸೊ ಇಂಥ ಪತ್ರಕರ್ತರಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ದಿಕ್ಸೂಚಿ ಭಾಷಣ ನಮಗೆ ನಾವು ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಅಮೂಲ್ಯವಾದ ಇದನ್ನು ನಾವು ನಿರ್ಮಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಹ ಅವರ ಹಲವಷ್ಟು ಬರಹಗಳು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಅವರ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಬರ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಇಷ್ಟ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಬಂದ ವರದಿಗಳ ಸಂಕಲನ, ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಮತ್ತು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇಳುತ್ತೀರಿ ಅಂತ ಹಿಂದೂನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳ ಲೇಖನಗಳ ಸಂಗ್ರಹ, ಇವೆರಡು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಅವರು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೂ ಚಿರಪರಿಚಿತರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ನಿವೃತ್ತಿ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ.
Thank you very much. I think I should begin by challenging this word, mainstream media. What we are talking about when we talk about mainstream media is a very large, gigantic structure that essentially excludes the mainstream. How much space in this media is there for the mainstream? The more correct term for that would be corporate media. That's who they are. They're very large. I'm not denying that. They're much bigger than you and I, 1,000 times bigger. But they do not either reflect the lives, livelihoods, experiences, or the interests of the mainstream of society. The average national daily, that's another wonderful term, national daily. A national daily is defined as any publication that has one edition coming out of Delhi. It may be the only edition, but it's called a national daily. The rest of us are anti-national. But the average national daily, according to the Center for Media Studies, Delhi, the data of CMS, valid up to 2013, after which it has got worse. The average national data is 0.67% of its front page to news of rural origin. 0.67% of its front page to a country where 69% live in those rural areas. 69% of your population is classified rural by the Census of India. Yeah, and your front page of national dailies on average 0.67%. The inside of those national dailies, all the social sectors put together, agriculture, climate change, education, homelessness, migrant, whatever you want, all those put together do not take the space that crime and entertainment take. And in India, as you know, and as you're seeing, crime and entertainment seriously overlap. Why do we cover someone? Because why do we cover, why are you covering the Sushant Singh Rajput case? Are you covering it as crime or as entertainment? Why do we cover Salman Khan's cases in court on the Black Buck case with so much space? A hit and run case, there are thousands in the country every year, but you cover it because of the entertainment aspect of it, right? In India, media and entertainment are one industry, two entities, one industry, heavily overlapping each other. Now, having shown you how non-mainstream the corporate media is, size doesn't mean you reflect the mainstream. In fact, you're extremely narrow and elitist as a medium. I would like Janashakti, I would like all of you to think of yourself as people's media, because social media is as much part of corporate monopoly as any other media. 5 companies in the world, Facebook, YouTube, Google, these 5 monopolize the internet. Most of the advertising revenue on the internet goes to them. And many of these guys also own the so-called traditional or legacy media. Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, owner of Amazon. He also owns Washington Post. And he will, over the next 10 years, own many television channels and many more television channels, newspapers and stuff. So what you're really talking about is gigantic corporate media. Now, switch to the present, to India. A very good look at how we are functioning, how this corporate media functions, and why the alternative is people's media. A very good look at how it functions. With the pandemic, with the lockdown, the public in India have never, ever needed journalism and journalists as much as they do in these past 6 months. And at the very time that the public most need journalists and journalism, the corporate media has sacked 1,200 full-time journalists, got rid of God knows how many stringers, and also retrenched thousands of non-journalist media workers. Okay, so at the very time that the public needs us most, they're sacking us in thousands. So what chance do they, as it is, the figure which I gave you of 0.67%, that is pre-pandemic. Sorry, that is pre-pandemic 5-year average. Even that 0.67% is an exaggeration because it's a 5-year average. In those 5 years, 1 year is an election year when the percentage goes up to 10%, 12%, whatever. If you remove the election year from those 5 years, the average space on the front page for rural news, 0.18 to 0.24%. Now, this media that gives you 0.18 to 0.67% of rural news on the front page has just sacked 1,200 journalists. How badly will that affect? Even that 0.24% is now doubtful. Right? They covered rural India during the pandemic from urban India because it affected our own interests. The cheap labor that came to us, and look at the media in that time asking the question, why are they leaving? Why are they going back? It was entirely the wrong question. I think that the migrants took an unhappy but rational decision that in the crisis that had come, their best chance of survival, just like your best chance of survival and mine, was at home. Anybody on this meeting, where was our best chance of survival? At home. For them also, and they understood us very well. They understood the urban middle classes and elites very well. They knew that we are not going to jump to their rescue when they have a problem. They knew that they had to sort their problem themselves, and they started walking back. When asking this question, why are they going back? The real question was, why did they leave their villages to come here in the first place? The real question was, why did they leave their villages to come to our cities in the first place? They left their villages because of something we all know, but never covered in the mainstream media. They left the villages because of what we call the agrarian crisis. Because for 30 years, our policies of neoliberalism have destroyed tens of millions of livelihoods in the countryside, forcing people to move out from their villages to the cities, to the towns, to the mega cities, to the metropolises, to other villages, to other towns, in search of jobs that are not there. You know, the farmer in Mandya pushed out when his agriculture collapses and he comes to Bengaluru, is he going to be absorbed as an executive in Infosys? No, at best, he will work in the Infosys canteen. A woman who produced food, a man who produced food will be giving chai in the canteen to the employees of Infosys. That's the best employment we created for them. So the question really was, what made them come in so many millions out of their villages? That is one thing. Second thing, as I said, we have sacked 1,200 journalists have been thrown out. That's a conservative estimate. I think it's a lot more. But we know that, say, Hindustan Times, 180 people were thrown out. Ananda Vikatan in Tamil Nadu, 175. And it's very clearly said, this is the first round, that 175. So when you add up, we get about 1,200 from all the different ideas. Since there are no strong journalist unions left in the country, very few, we are not going to get accurate figures or data on this. Okay. But look at what else is going on in your society. On the one hand, the corporate world, the corporate media is throwing out thousands of media workers, 1,200 journalists. So journalists are coming under severe attack. It's funny, isn't it? 1,200 journalists are sacked, and it seems almost like an equal number of them are covering Sushant Singh Rajput. That seems to be the equation within the media. Okay, but anyway, 1,200 of them are sacked by the corporate world. On the other side, never have journalists come so much under attack from the state and the government. There have been more than 75 FIRs filed against journalists. Journalists have been arrested, had FIRs, charge sheets, under more sections of law than ever before. I am part of a committee, official committee, looking at ranking of India in the Press Freedom Index. And we found that the government itself showed us that there were 46 laws that affect the media in this country. Now, apart from those, when I looked at that, I was stunned that 46 laws affecting the media. But, I mean, those include copyright and things, but still, I found that the main laws affecting the media were not included in that list. When I included those, it went to 55 because journalists are being arrested under UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention of blah, blah, blah Act. They're being arrested for sedition. They're being arrested under UAPA connected to terrorism. They're being arrested under the Diseases Act. They're being arrested under the Epidemics Act. You know who were the people arrested under Epidemics, Diseases Act, the old version of 1800s? There was a gentleman called Bal Gangadhar Tilak who was arrested under that act. Apart from sedition, Epidemic Act, spreading panic, all this sort of a thing, Tilak was arrested and imprisoned. It was one of the charges against him. Okay. Now people are being arrested like the portal in Coimbatore, East City, the portal in Coimbatore did a story saying that in one of the main hospitals in Coimbatore, doctors and nurses are not getting proper protective equipment. Where did that story come from? It came from the doctors and nurses. 3 people belonging to the portal were summoned to the police station and all that. In Varanasi, in the Prime Minister's home constituency, the DM announced that he would be filing FIRs against a journalist who did a story showing Musahars, the poorest Dalits, eating grass. The children of Musahars were eating grass. And not only did the DM threaten them with charge sheeting and arrest and all that, he then takes his child, his own child, the DM, and shows him also saying, this is very edible. See, have a look. Now, the arbitrariness and impunity with which journalists who still do their job are being attacked will ensure that there are fewer and fewer and fewer of them each month, each year, and that India's ranking will get even worse in the Press Freedom Index. I need you to understand, as I said, the corporate media not as structures of information and enlightenment and education. You need to understand that media as a gigantic commercial corporate enterprise. The media and entertainment industry in India, as I said, they are one industry. Media and entertainment are one industry. The value of that industry as of this year, February, March, was 2 trillion rupees. Not million, not billion, 2 trillion rupees. In February, that would have been $37 billion. That is the value of this industry. It is a behemoth, gigantic monopolies. Mainstream, where do the mainstream figure in the ownership of the media? Are their interests articulated by the media? In the recent farmers' protest against the bills, Times of India, Indian Express, Hindustan Times, paper after paper after paper wrote lead editorials supporting the farm bills. They would add one line, yeah, it should have been done more tactfully. You shouldn't have thrown out the opposition. You should speak to the farmers. But these are damn good laws. This is who your media are. They represent the corporate world. They represent corporate interests. And they are not going to do otherwise. To the extent, immediately after, please notice, immediately after the 3 farm laws came in, and the opposition walked out, thrown out, etc., the government used that opportunity to pass 3 labor laws also, labor codes, which completely have made forming a trade union, activizing a trade union, gaining recognition as a union, going on strike, unbelievably difficult. On top of this, we get a Supreme Court judgment which creates a concept that I never dreamed would exist in this country, in any meaningful democracy. You can protest, but you can protest only in designated spaces. I have never heard of designated dissent. When the judiciary and the state designate dissent, it reminds me of the old British phrase, Her Majesty's loyal opposition. Yeah, we are His Majesty's loyal dissidents. That is what you are making of, not only of journalists and journalism, but of all freedom of expression. When we say that, what is a designated dissent? It's an oxymoron. Yeah. the entire protests of Gandhi, of Ambedkar, of any one of the great Indian leaders was based on challenging the designated spaces. Salt Satyagraha, or Ambedkar's march to the tank to drink the water of the tank. Every protest was necessarily based on challenging that this space is out designated for the elite. You cannot come here. This space is designated for XYZ. You cannot come here. Where the heck is this concept of designated dissent going to take you? I think, the other ridiculous thing is the innocent injury of all over the rating scam. The entire corporate media is a scam. It's based on, have you all forgotten? I'll be very unhappy if you have forgotten, because I was the guy who broke that story November 29, 2009 on the front page of the Hindu. Have we all forgotten the phenomenon called paid news? Yeah. Now we are talking about fake news, but paid news is also fake. It's also a fraud, essentially a fraud. And the series of stories we did in the Hindu showed you that paid news was not individual journalist corruption. It was an industry run by corporate media, worth well over 1,000 crores, as the unions of journalists in Andhra Pradesh, that time undivided Andhra Pradesh, calculated. Yeah, between 300 and 750 crores in their own areas. So you're looking at an industry that is predicated and dedicated to reducing journalism to a revenue stream. Yeah. So incidentally, the rating scam, let alone Bark and Hansa, Nielsen also had many such historical problems in the United States. As one of the founders of television news, Fred Friendly, president of CBS News at one time, he put it so beautifully. He said, there is absolutely no incentive for television to do its best when there is so much money to be made from doing its worst. There is no incentive for television to do its best when there is so much money to be made from doing its worst. Another, John K. Galbraith, called this kind of media licensing a license to print money. Okay, that's who they are. They may be lying to you about what they are, but they are true to themselves in practice. They are there to make gigantic profits for themselves, for their masters, and for all the other commercial interests of their owners, who are not just in media, but in 1,000 other enterprises. The largest media owner in India is the richest Indian in the world, and the fourth richest man in the world, Mukesh Ambani, is also the largest owner of media in this country. So please stop romanticizing the corporate media, the media as fourth estate or fourth pillar of democracy. They are much more into real estate than into fourth estate. Please understand this. In this situation, our responsibilities become infinitely greater. Those of us who are trying to say something different. And in that sense, the challenges before us, the difficulties before us are infinitely greater. But also look at one of the things that has been happening for 15, 20 years and which happened very rapidly during the pandemic. That is the collapse of the media advertising revenue model. It collapsed. And each such collapse leads to further concentration of ownership, fewer and fewer owners of media, right? And the only problem for them has been no one has worked out a fireproof, foolproof revenue model on the internet that keeps breaking down in various ways. So but they will find it. They're searching for it. Believe me, they will set up more and more successful firewalls and make you pay for things. The idea that internet gives us this great freedom. I need you to understand this. The internet, excuse me, the internet gives all of us, the internet guarantees you a voice. It does not guarantee you that anyone will listen to your voice. That is guaranteed by big money. Okay, you may have 50,000 followers on Facebook. You cannot reach more than 2% of them when you want to without paying Facebook for a post. Maximum you can reach is 1 to 2% directly. The rest you have to put paid posts. Yeah, I mean, here are these people, they are collecting rent on your popularity. They're collecting rent on your standing and credibility. 75%, 74% of all search engine activity in the world is Google. 82% of all email, Google, Outlook, the Microsoft Outlook, Apple. 68% of all online auction, eBay. I mean, the figures are horrible. They are greater monopolies than any monopolies in history. Because one thing distinguishes them from all earlier monopolies. These guys own your personal data. I call them human data traffickers. Yeah, they're into human data trafficking. Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, one after the other, the scandals are coming out and the numbers are not 5, 10. So the numbers involved in Cambridge Analytica, in Facebook scandals, which they are appearing in hearings in the US Congress, Google being fined billions of dollars in Europe. These are involving not 20,000 or 30,000 readers, they're involving tens of millions of human beings. The theft of data. Tomorrow you write to your friend in Brazil, I'm coming to Brazil for a holiday. How many ads will end up in your inbox for resorts in Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro? Yeah, we have been algorithmed out of our intellect. This kind of monopoly where people own your personal data and trade in it, and also the growing incidents of identity theft, all of it. It's another conversation on the kind of problems we face. But the issue is the central problem of your media is monopoly capital ownership. That is the central problem of our media. If we are to function differently, then we have to have different structures, different objectives, different different so-called revenue models, which are not going to make you dependent on advertising revenue. See, if like the Times of India, 85% of your revenue comes from the advertiser and 10% or less comes from the reader, you are going to treat the advertiser as 8 times more important than the reader. And that's as simple as that. So you need to have You need to have ways of functioning where you do not get too dependent on one donor, on one advertising, one major advertiser. You need to figure out ways, a lot of which will depend on how much trust you are able to invoke in the public. Random donations. We are in the People's Archive of India have managed to reach something like 35% of what we get in donations is random donations. Then we get help from techies donating labor, etc., etc. A lot of senior reporters in the so-called mainstream write for us under assumed names quietly on the side, and they don't even charge us for it because they want to be they entered to do some decent journalism, not the stuff you see on television or in the print media. So you're going to have this thing about what you see as an alternative, what I hope you will look at yourselves as the media, as part of the media, as you want to call yourself alternative, whatever. In a sense, what we are getting into is what I call guerrilla journalism. Those who remain in the corporate media, though they are guerrillas, the good ones. They are all the time trying to widen the public space in the private forum. Those who have other media, you can call those liberated zones, if you like, or which are struggling to stay liberated. We need to think the best guarantee of your survival, your spread, is the organic link you develop to the masses, to the mass movements. We found how much PARI grew when the farmers took a historic march from Nashik to Mumbai in 2018. 40,000 farmers marched 182 kilometers in 38 to 40 degrees heat. Ours was the only reporter there when they started from the so-called national media. From outside of Nashik, ours was the one full-time reporter there. Suddenly, the rest of, when it became so big, the so-called mainstream media was desperately asking for permission to reproduce our material. Our readership grew. Those media, their readers became aware of us. They got to know that here is someone who is not giving 0.67%, but 100% of their journalism to rural India and to poor rural Indians, particularly focusing on the labor of women, Dalits, and Adivasis. That link we built up, we also built up, and I'm glad that I understand, your venture will be in Kannada. That is extremely important. PARI, People's Archive of Rural India, now publishes in 13 languages, including Kannada. We're very slow in our translations in Kannada nowadays, but we publish in 13 languages. And the 13 languages we publish in are spoken by 800 million to 100 million, a billion Indians, though we touch a statistically negligible number of them. But the fact is that we exist in these different languages. I also believe that your media, your new venture, or whatever else you want to start or build, or an old one that you want to renovate, so to speak, now has to focus tremendously on the education sector because of what is happening with the rush to online education. New corporate monopolies, Byju's, Unacademy. Byju's has doubled its value in 12 months, from 5.5 billion to 10.5 billion. Okay. Now I ask you, in PARI we did stories. We went to the Adivasi areas. I ask you to do this in Karnataka, and I'll give you some numbers about Karnataka. How many, we tried looking because the numbers don't exist. How many girls, in our case, we are looking at rural girls. How many rural girls below the age of 16 own a smartphone? How many millions of them, to get access their PDFs, their class material, have to beg their elder brother age 17 or 18 who is working in a brick kiln or in a factory, glass factory nearby, on Saturdays and Sundays, Bhaiya humko de do, they take his phone. How many girls have you met, rural girls who have smartphones? Tell me. Below age of 20 also. But I'm talking for the education purpose, below the age of 16. I need that all the alternative media, progressive media, people's media jump into this and provide children an alternative to that kind of education. We are doing this on PARI. In September, we opened a section called PARI Education. That is so far in English, but we will be moving into the other languages. This is something that you should do. There is the only NSS survey, I think large survey, that the government of India actually published, because this NDA government, anything you ask them, they have suppressed the publication of National Sample Survey. They say no data. In fact, NDA has become no data available. That's what on the net people call the NDA. No data available. That is the name of the government. But one NSS report has come. Social consumption, indicators of social consumption in education. Middle of 2018, so fairly recent. It gives you some fantastic figures. How many of you sitting today in Karnataka can tell me how many rural families, only 14% of Karnataka's population is in the Bangalore surrounding area, in the greater Bangalore area. How many rural families in Karnataka have computers in their home? Can I tell you it's about half of what the figure is, half of Uttar Pradesh. 2% of rural households in Karnataka, 2% of rural households have computers. According to the Government of India, National Sample Survey Organization, Indicators of Social Consumption in Education, June 2018. The tables are from table 31 to 33.1, which will give you all this. Uttar Pradesh has 4% rural households with, and has a great rural UP has a greater number of people accessing in rural areas, accessing internet in the last 30 days before the survey. It makes a lot of sense to me because UP has millions and millions more of migrants who need that internet connection, right? To be able to transfer their money, to be able to connect with their families. There are incredibly more UP migrants than anyone else. But still, what a shame. Karnataka, mother of India's Silicon Valley, 2% of households have. Please look at, I won't even tell you the rest of the figures. You should go and see it. How many rural women access internet in Karnataka in the 30 days preceding the survey? In this situation, it becomes your responsibility to be an alternative to these media. You need to have the free software, connect with the free software movement of India in FSMI in Karnataka. You ought to be able to take to government schools an intranet experience. You ought to be able to create with the People's Science Movement educational modules for children in science in government schools. A lot of this possibilities exist for you to connect, build that organic link with the masses. It's not enough to denounce that corporate media. It's necessary for us to pronounce on what we will do, how we will build those links. Historically, your media grew great. 170 of its 200 years. It was the organic link with the masses. What kind of great circulation did Gandhi have? What was his print order? 1,500, 3,000, at the highest 5,000. What kind of print order did Ambedkar have? 500, 1,000, 1,500? Here is the paradox of Indian journalism and media. In the freedom struggle, a tiny media served a great, wide, all-encompassing national purpose. Today, a gigantic corporate media serves the narrowest of interests. That is the paradox of Indian media. So do please challenge this thing, but also there is also something to be learned from the mainstream media. There is to be learned negative lessons also, and a few minor positive ones. But this is the thing that I will leave you with, that you have a public desperately needing good journalism, desperately wanting to know what is happening, and you have a media catering to what? To incitement of communal riots, to incitement of public disorder and hatred, to covering, salacious, voyeuristic coverage of Bollywood actresses, enmeshed in what everyone knows are entirely false cases. We stand out by actually covering the everyday lives of everyday people. That is what I think will be your alternative, your answer. Thank you.
ವಿಡಿಯೋವನ್ನ ವೀಕ್ಷಿಸಿದ್ದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಈ ವಿಡಿಯೋವನ್ನ ಇತರರಿಗೂ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಚಾನೆಲ್ಗೆ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಆಗಿ, ಹಾಗೆ ನಿರಂತರ ಸುದ್ದಿಗಳಿಗಾಗಿ ಬೆಲ್ ಐಕಾನ್ ಅನ್ನು ಒತ್ತಿ.